The fifth and final requisite of a scholar is scholarship, knowledge, the transcendence from a state of ignorance to a state of enlightenment. A leader is the one who knows the way, who goes the way, and who shows the way. In simple. But knowledge is an abstract, isn't it? Knowledge is what? An abstract. Anybody can fake it. Anybody can claim it. With a charismatic tongue, with an impressive appearance, with a collection of followers. Are these really indicators of Islamic scholarship? And here is where we all pay attention. Let's pay attention. At this point, I want you to realize, this is the fifth criteria. I want you to realize that all great changes are preceded by chaos. Drown out all the chaos in your mind. Let simplicity survive. Bring the common sense back. Adjust your focus and listen. What is knowledge? What is knowledge which is required for scholarship? Number one, mastery of the Arabic language, the language in which the tradition was preserved. This includes pre-Islamic Arabic as well as the Arabic language of the first century of Islamic civilization. This includes things like grammar and syntax and Arabic morphology and Arabic rhetoric and prose and expression. What else? A working understanding of Islamic legal theory or usulul fiqh. This gives the scholar the ability to decide which literary, which deductive, which inductive and intellectual devices to give precedence to in different circumstances. And this also includes in this the mastery of the underlying principles of Islamic law, or what they call al-qawa'id al-fiqhiyya. The third thing, a mastery of transmitted evidence. What does this comprise of? This comprises having understood and studied and memorized the Quran and most of the transmitted sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Although we could say that memorization is not a requirement, but it is just rather an added bonus. What is required is the learning and the understanding and a working, application of that theory, of the transmitted evidence, which is the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And fourthly, the mastered ability to do fiqh. This means exposure to areas of scholarly agreement, so as not to violate these agreements. And definitely areas of disagreement, so that rigidity and conclusiveness is not forced and imposed on those areas. You have people who are at the positions of leadership, not necessarily those people who have knowledge and the requisite of knowledge. Those people who might be really well known on YouTube. They might have a following on Facebook and on other platforms. And they have no understanding, no exposure to those areas where the scholars agreed in the past and the present. And as a result, having no understanding and no knowledge of where the scholars agreed and where the religion is quite clear-cut and absolute, they would come up with really strange opinions, which are opinions which violate agreements of the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. examples of the nature of, an alternative lifestyle, if you want to call it that. A husband gets married to a wife, alternative lifestyle, which has recently been legalized in our country. The morality of the issue. There are many people out there who would say, hey, Islamically, that kind of a lifestyle is okay. We should be open to it. We should be allowing of it. And in fact, they go to the extent that Islam says that this kind of a lifestyle is fine. That's a different thing. How do you treat the people who live a particular lifestyle? That's a different issue. We're talking about the morality of the issue. In the same way that we regard alcoholism and, relationships outside of the institution of marriage as being immoral, we regard these alternative lifestyles as well in the same light, and we view them in the same way. There are people amongst us in our times who have even violated those kinds of boundaries, which is something that we need to be wary of as well. And a scholar is also someone who has exposure to those areas where the scholars actually disagreed. And they went back and forth and they had different opinions. And yes, at the end of the day, a person would adopt one of those positions for their practical life. And that's only natural, that you would have to adopt one of those positions when you are confronted with a situation in your life. You will go to a scholar will answer that question. He will give you one of those opinions out of the many opinions. You will take it, you will trust that scholar and the qualifications of that person, and you will go ahead and you will act on it. That's fine, that is natural. And that is, what is expected of an everyday Muslim. But what we are talking about is rigidity. And, the kind of behavior that is exhibited by people who don't have exposure to these areas of disagreement. And they don't know about the ethics of disagreement as well. From the Islamic tradition, we do have ethics of disagreement as well. Read on the 1400 years of scholarship. Just because we are not exposed to it, it doesn't mean that it exists. They say, الناس أعداء لما جهلوا. They say, الناس أعداء لما جهلوا. That people are against that which they don't know. If you don't know about something, automatically you'll refer back to something you do know. And what you do know is not that. And therefore you will oppose it with all your might and all your energies, and you will say this is wrong and this is not from Islam and this is a bid'ah and this is not correct and that is wrong and that person is deviated and so on and so forth. You will defend your position. You will defend what you know. And that is where the problem lies many times. We need to understand what we don't know. We need to know what we don't know. And stick to that. And say, hey, I know this much, I don't know about this. Maybe it exists, I haven't heard about it. Ask a scholar. Ask someone who knows. Ask someone who has more exposure.